it's always good to just have in your mind the principle that we tend not to opt for things that make us happy. We opt for things that make us feel at home and comfortable and feel familiar. And the things that feel like home to us or familiar to us couldn't be terrible. We, depending on how we've grown up or what influences we've had, our normal can be really, really tough. It could be something it could be chronic anxiety. It can be chaos. It can be someone making us have to earn their love. It can be someone who's inconsistent and, goes cold for days on end and then gives us a little hit of affection and it feels amazing. And that can be what we're used to. And so when we say, why do I keep doing this? Why do I keep going for people that are bad for me? There's nothing, you're not broken. You're just doing what we all do, which is, I list in a chapter called Never Satisfied in the book, I list some of the reasons why we keep gravitating towards people who are bad for us. One of them being a scarcity mindset, as you mentioned, that when we think nothing else is coming along, we tend to settle for what's right in front of us. The second reason is we choose bad people or people who treat us poorly because it's what we know. And that's not just like some self-confidence issue or a self-worth issue. It's if a dolphin in a tank might grow up learning that to get a fish, it has to do backflips or jump through a hoop, and then humans will feed it a fish. If that dolphin was released into the ocean tomorrow and it started doing backflips or swimming up to boats for food that could be fatal, we wouldn't say the dolphin had a self-worth problem. We would say this dolphin is doing what it knows.
Yeah.
And it doesn't differentiate between the ocean and the tank. When we were growing up in the tank in our own lives, the tank was the ocean. The tank was life. The tank was the world. So we go out into the world sort of looking for the experience we had in the tank because it's what's familiar to us. Even if we see friends who are in healthier relationships, who are with people who don't cheat or don't treat them badly or make them feel safe, don't belittle them or demean them, or if we've never experienced that, then it's not a reality for us. And we have that kind of myopia that I know that's their life, but it's not my life. It doesn't feel real to us. What feels real to us is whatever we've come to believe is, whatever life is to us, whatever is our experience, that's what's real to us. And we go looking, unconsciously, we go looking for that experience out there in the world. I write in the book about the race car driver Mario Andretti and how he said his tip for race car driving was don't look at the wall because your car goes where your eyes go. And that's not a throwaway thing to me, that what he said there. It's kind of a mini obsession because I think of so many places in my own life where the wall has been something I keep crashing into, and how it takes something very intentional to get to kind of orient our eyes away from the wall. My whole life I had a hard time really trusting people. And I kind of grew up in an environment where, there was a lot of a sense of agenda and waiting for the other shoe to drop. And so for me in my adult life, I found it hard to think that someone could be doing something just in a pure way, or that it could be reciprocal, or even just that people don't, it's not, people aren't just going to take what they can get, and they're not going to not everyone is a bad person or out to get you. They're just people. like you. They have good days and bad days. And some days they're more selfish and other days they're more generous. And they tend to be more generous when they feel more safe and when they feel like they're not being taken advantage of. And it's hard to make someone else feel like they're not being taken advantage of if you're constantly in protection mode and you're constantly kind of monitoring how much you give because you're worried someone else is going to take advantage of you. You end up creating the wall. You literally end up creating scenarios where you either find people you can't trust or you turn, by the way that you are in relationships, you create this very transactional relationship because you're worried about getting hurt. And so you end up precipitating the very thing you're most afraid of because that's your wall. And I've become fascinated with how our past in our love life does not have to equal our future, no matter how long it's been that way. But you have to find ways to start to create a different reality than the one that you've been experiencing for so long that your brain has started to think is just reality. Because if you stare at the wall long enough, you won't know it's the wall anymore. You'll just think it's the world. And so what I help people to do is to start to use curiosity, which I think is a really important gateway drug to new beliefs, to help people start to see that there may be other ways of being in the world that create new results than the ones they've gotten. And when you get even a slightly different result than the one you've gotten, it's a kind of a mind-blowing thing because you realize it's like it becomes apparent to you that there's a different way of being and there are other realities outside of the one you've been living for so long. Then life becomes really expansive and you start to realize there's so much more possibilities than the ones you've been telling yourself are available to you.
So beautiful. Thank you, man. Thank you for sharing.
I hope that wasn't too abstract.
No, I think it hits it right on the head because it's, I guess the cliche of like looking at life through our color tinted lenses, then our eyes adjust to just think that's the way that life is. And I love one of my favorite quotes from Wayne Dyer of when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change.
Yes.
And it's coming back again to that first principle of seeing how we look at things. And oftentimes we can't always see the things that we're perceiving about reality that become the default way and the wall that we're staring at because it's become so normalized for us. It's just the ecosystem in which our consciousness is an inhabitant in. And so I feel like relationships often do because it's like you feel good enough, happy enough to go into relationships that can give you the opportunity to reveal those blind spots because I feel like that is ultimately, and I want to dive into how really relationships do become that mirror for us to see those spots where we're not fully aware of because we do live in this realm of duality where we relate to things and that's how we can see the reflection from other people. And romantic relationships got to be one of probably the most trying, testing, potent reflections there could be.
Yeah, which is kind of why it's at a certain point you have to be in the game because the idea of like healing yourself and doing all of the work in isolation is like the one hand clapping.
Right.
It's at a certain point you're going to have to meet the frontier between you and another person and all of the frictions that occur on that frontier. Early in my relationship with my wife, when we were just dating, something happened that made me jealous. And it kind of came out of nowhere. It like really snuck up on me. And I felt immediately unsafe. And not that in the moment I would have framed it in terms of I feel unsafe. It made me mad.
Yeah.
But really beneath it, I was unsafe and afraid and maybe felt slightly emasculated. But in that moment, I kind of shut down. I became passive aggressive and probably a little controlling and just not a good version of me, not a version of me I would ever want to air publicly. And we probably argued for a couple of hours. I mean, it was like just clashing for a while. And eventually I kind of shut down. and just was like, went completely avoidant. And I think after a while, she came to me in a very compassionate way and was like, look, I want to understand what this made you feel and where it's coming from, because I hate the idea that I would never want to make you feel that, and so on. She also said, you can't bring it to me in this way. Like, so she's compassionate, but with a standard at the same time, which was important because it wasn't okay the way that I handled it. I was very activated. And eventually I shared with her what I had felt and why it made me feel that, and maybe where it was coming from. And I got a little vulnerable. And she was really loving and compassionate. And then I shut down again because I was like, I should never have said all of that. That was like, in my mind, I was like, that wasn't sexy. I've now like gone from being this heroic, masculine, in control person to here's all of my insecurity and here's all the things I really feel. And I shut down. I had like a vulnerability hangover. And it's so funny because I can think back to a time in my childhood when I was playing outside with my brothers and a couple of my friends, Alex, one of my best friends at the time. I was probably about 11 years old. And we were all at our house. And I can't remember what happened, but something, maybe my mum came out and yelled at me about something. Something happened that embarrassed me and made me feel vulnerable. And I went up to my room in the middle of this beautiful sunny day. We were all playing outside. I went up to my room and I shut the door and I wouldn't let anyone in. And my brothers, my friend Alex, his brother, would all come up one by one and be like, come out. Like, we're having fun. We're going to do this. We're going to go on the trampoline now. And I was just like, no. Like, I'm good. I'm fine. And then my mum came up, Matt, come on, like, come play. Like, everyone's having a good time. No. And I was just, this was my way of reacting to me being hurt, was to try to punish everybody else. God forbid I actually tell anyone I was hurt or embarrassed or ashamed. And then I remember a couple of hours later, they came up and they went, we're all going to go to Alex's house now for the night. We're going to like carry on the sleepover at Alex's. Come on, let's go. And I was like, no. And one by one, everyone came up, no. My mum came up, Matt, please, come on. They're all going. Don't do this. Like, everyone's having a nice time. I had no enemies in the house. Not one. Everyone loved me. But I shut everyone out. And I'll never forget the next day when my brothers came home from that sleepover and they were like, oh, it was so great. We watched movies, we did this, we ordered pizza. It was just this like, oh, it was so good. And inside I felt sick because I'd missed out on something that I couldn't get back. Like, I'll never have been in that sleepover with my brothers and my friends and had that moment. Not because anyone was against me. Everyone loved me. But because my inability to share what I was feeling or to just be vulnerable about the fact that something had affected me made me punish everyone else. But really, I wasn't punishing anyone. I was punishing myself. I deprived myself of that moment. And I look back on that moment with Audrey, and it's that my wife, Audrey, when I pushed her away, first I wasn't vulnerable because I did the same thing, right? I shut myself in the room and told her to go away. And then when I finally did get vulnerable, I was like, what have I done? I'm not lovable now. And so I shut down again and went, well, at least you're not going to hurt me because I'll just now go quiet on you before you can tell me that I'm now not sexy. And so I tried to shut her out again emotionally. And she said to me, I ended up confessing to her that I really felt like now that I'd said that, she would look at me differently. And she said, oh my God, that is so crazy. I think you're amazing. And I love getting to know you better. And the more I know you, the more I just feel like I know who you are and what I understand you better. I have context for you. It doesn't change all the other stuff I know about you, all the amazing things that you are, and it doesn't change any of that. It just means I know more about you, and I love getting to know more about you. And it took me, like, I don't know if I really believed her in that moment, but over time, I started to realize she meant that. And that became this incredibly corrective healing experience for me, because I actually realized, oh my God, this person really does. Not only do they accept me for all of me, but this idea I have in my head that if you know these things, you'll change the way you see me and you'll never see me as this other person again, was completely false. And that actually what made her love me more was seeing me as a whole person. But that corrective experience helped heal me in that. I take some credit for it because I had to do what I hadn't done before, which is to actually come forward with how I was feeling and how something had made me feel. I give her an enormous amount of credit because the environment she helped create for me to do that made me brave. And then how she responded when I was brave made me even more brave, made me feel accepted. So that's what I mean when I say the kind of one hand clapping thing, because that's not something I could have achieved in a room on my own.
Yeah.
In the same way as it didn't have to be with someone that I was romantically engaged with. It could have been with a friend. It could have been with a father figure. It could have been with someone else. But I needed some kind of corrective experience that helped me to question that belief that I wouldn't be lovable if I started speaking about some of these things. And André, it's so funny. There's something so meta about the fact that I'm even telling this story right now, because honestly, if I'd have done this podcast 5 years ago, I wouldn't have told this story. I really wouldn't. Like I would have brought a more heroic version of myself to this conversation. But because of that healing, I now am much braver in the world because I have accepted myself differently. I've made peace with parts of myself. I give myself a completely different level of compassion for where those things come from. Because by the way, if I was doing that at 11 years old, that was deep stuff, right? That's not new in my life. I've been doing it my whole life. If it was easy for me to change that, I would have changed it years ago. How much have I cost myself in my life by being that way? Like I need to give myself compassion for wherever that comes from, because it certainly got wired up in a time when I wasn't making conscious decisions about how I was getting wired up. So that's how I think about these things. And I think when you're able to give yourself that compassion, by the way, you're able to give someone else a completely different level of compassion. In trying to find love, especially when we're out there dating, we tend to be much more judgmental of other people when we're not offering ourselves any self-compassion. Guys, too many of you have not yet tried Matthew AI. I even hear from people still who don't realize that Matthew AI exists. This is my digital mind that you can text or call and hear my voice speaking back to you 24 hours a day. So you can literally wake up in the middle of the night feeling confused, anxious, heartbroken, lonely, wanting to work on your confidence, and call me and have a conversation with me as your coach answering your questions. All you need to do to try it is go to askmh.com. You can try it for free, ask a few questions, and see what you think of its answers. I know you're going to love it. It blows people's minds. That link again is askmh.com.